Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a spoiler-free review for A Ruin of Roses by K.F. Breene. But before we go ahead and get on into the review, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new bookish content. I post new videos every Monday, Thursday, Saturday, and sometimes other days throughout the week. Also, don't forget to check down in the description box below for links to my social media, my Buddy Read Discord, and my Patreon, where you can be entered into winning book giveaways from me. A Ruin of Roses is an adult Beauty and the Beast retelling, and it definitely is a different type of spin on Beauty and the Beast, and I would consider it for sure a mature retelling, meaning that it's for readers 18 plus. And I would go as far as to say that this book could be classified as like erotic fantasy. So when I went into it, I actually saw this book, I don't know if it was on Goodreads or Amazon or somewhere, and I clicked on it. And if y'all know me or have been watching my channel, you know that Beauty and the Beast is my favorite fairy tale. I will pick up any retelling possible. And I saw that it was like a smutty retelling, which isn't a genre that I normally gravitate to. In fact, I can only think of one other like erotic type fantasy I've ever read in my entire life, and a coworker lent it to me, and I don't even remember the name or the author or anything. It was that long ago. So erotic fantasy isn't a genre that I ever pick up. So my husband actually gifted this book to me on Valentine's Day, kind of like as a joke, because he knows I like Beauty and the Beast, and like it's Valentine's Day and it's supposed to be like smutty. So I decided to pick it up. So this book isn't very long. It's only about 330 pages or so, and it is the first book in a series. So the entire like storyline wasn't completed in this first installment. In this book, we follow a world of shifters or shapeshifters. So essentially, every single person at one time was able to shift into an animal type being. And it's almost like there's two personalities living within each person, because our main character, Finley, comes into contact with, I'm just going to say her inner animal, because the world hasn't been expanded for me to really know what it's called. So she does come into contact with like her inner animal, and her inner animal does speak to her. It's almost like having something live inside you. So one time, everybody was a shapeshifter, and then there was this curse put on the land by the Demon King, and the regular people lost their ability to change. However, the prince is still able to shift into his animal, which is a dragon, and it's not in the strongest form that it used to be. He doesn't have his wings anymore, so his alternate, I guess, form has been punished by the Demon King, but he is still able to actually transform, and that is his beast. His beast is his dragon form. I will say that this world was very convoluted and confusing at points. I don't feel like the world building was well executed at all, and it took me the whole book just kind of putting the puzzle pieces that the author gave the reader together to try and get an entire glimpse of how this world functioned and what it was with regards to magic and things like that. And I just feel like she put just too much into this world for the length of the book and did not do a good job explaining it. For example, at the beginning of the book, the main character mentions how they used to have electricity, but ever since the curse from the Demon King, they no longer have electricity, so they're living in kind of like this more antiquated time period, but they at one time had modern conveniences, but it's a fantasy world. And then also the area where the beast lives and like his castle and his land, like the Demon King put the spell on only that part of the land, and time stands still only on that part of the land. So outside of where the beast lives in his castle, time still moves, but it stands still at one point. So when Finley, the main character's name is Finley, when she arrives to the castle, the prince tells her that time has stood still for 16 years. So just a couple convoluted things about this world and how it functions. Ever since the curse was put on this world by the Demon King, a lot of the normal regular folks are getting sick, and there's really only one way to combat this sickness, and it is this antidote that is derived from this everless plant that can only be found on the prince's land. So of course our main character Finley, she has a talent for working with plants and herbs, and she steals the everless plant from the prince's lands and creates the antidote to help people live longer. It doesn't cure people, it actually just helps them live longer with this sickness. So that is how she initially gets captured by the beast, as she is stealing plants from his land, and he takes her away to his castle. So a little bit different from the original fairy tale. There is like no father stealing roses or anything like that. Then we get to the prince's castle. His name is Nyfir. kind of a strange name. I wasn't a fan of it, so I just call him the prince. Once we get to his castle, we see that there are different types of demons that basically live at his castle. There are succubus and incubus, which are like extremely like sexual demons, and they coerce people into doing all sorts of stuff at this castle. So this kind of leads me into the main thing that I didn't like about this book. So going in, I was like, I knew it was smutty and that kind of thing, but like this book was just downright vulgar. Like, I don't even know another way to say it. Like, not only was the language vulgar from our main character and our prince and all the characters, but like the situations were vulgar. And I really wasn't a fan of it because I felt like it was just added into the story for complete shock value. Like, it didn't add anything. Yes, we get that these demons are like horrible and they manipulate people and they use people, but you really don't need to be vulgar about it. You could have just explained that. And it wasn't just that part of the story that was vulgar. It was the main character and her thoughts and things that she would say. Like, no one speaks like that. It was almost like, I don't know, like two 14-year-old boys discovered some new bad words and started learning about sex and decided to write a book and were like bragging about it to all their friends. Like, the immaturity of the sexual situations and the immaturity of the language from all the characters was, oh my gosh, it was downright comedic. It was so bad. And it really, really threw me off for a lot of the story because it just wasn't sexy. It wasn't cute. It wasn't romantic. It was just vulgar. And then we have the obviously main conflict of Beauty and the Beast, I would say, with Beauty having to, or Finley having to fall in love with the Beast, and the Beast is, you know, kind of full of animosity and doesn't really treat her well at first, and that whole thing was going on, and, you know, he kind of softens up to her and she sees a side of him she likes. So that part was good and well done, but then once again, you have like two overly sexualized characters, and it had to do with like the shape shifting. So the animal inside Finley was attracted to the animal inside the prince, and like it was almost like they were operating on their basic instinctual level and not as human beings. Like, they were literally operating and acting and thinking on an animalistic level. And it just didn't work for me because like I'm a human and I need more in my stories than just basic animalistic urges, and that's all that they were focusing on. And it just, I don't know, it just wasn't for me. So having said that, there are some elements that are decent in this book. So it does follow some of the traditional Beauty and the Beast, you know, ideas. So you have a girl that's spunky and intelligent that gets caught by the Beast on his land at whisked away to his castle, and they do fall in love, or will eventually if things keep going the way it did in the first book. But it's definitely a mature take on the story that has some very adult scenes, not only between the two main characters, but also between different characters in the castle and the demons and the incubus and the succubus. That was a little off-putting for me personally, but hey, that's your thing, go for it. And despite all of that, I read the whole book. Like, it was entertaining enough. So I think the main reason that I continue to read this book is because it was gifted to me by my husband. I think if I'd picked this up from like the library or Kindle Unlimited, I probably would have DNF'd it. But I actually did read the whole thing, and it was decent. It was. The story was okay. The writing was amateurish. The characters I didn't really connect with, but it wasn't horrible. And having said that, I gave this book a 2.5 out of 5 stars because I was able to finish it. It had some reminiscences from the original Beauty and the Beast fairy tale, and some of the interactions and scenes between Finley and the prince were okay and good, and I liked them. And it was entertaining. It was just cheap entertainment that I didn't have to think about and really didn't require any brain power to process. So that's why I ended up giving it a 2.5 out of 5, a straight down the road type of rating. Will I be continuing the series? Most likely not. I probably would continue it if the writing wasn't so darn vulgar. It's out there, guys. Like, it's a lot. If she wasn't so vulgar, if the main character wasn't so like in your face, I probably would continue the series. And also just like the demons at the castle, and it was a little bit gross and cringeworthy, some of those scenes. So if a couple of things would just be toned down and made a little bit more tasteful, then I probably would continue the series, but as of right now, I don't plan on doing so. Alright, you guys, that is it for my spoiler-free review of A Ruin of Roses by K.F. Breene. Let me know in the comments if you've read this book and what you thought of it, and I will see y'all in another video soon. Goodbye!